Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him. Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's good? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of VTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. We've got programming every day this week to follow what the Chicago Bears are doing with their head coach search and any major news that comes out of Hallis Hall. And we always start our week here with Greg Gabriel. Greg is here and ready to share his thoughts about the Packers, the coaching search, and answer your questions. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Anytime you win, and shit, we needed one. It's fun.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I didn't see that one coming with a minute and a half left.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I didn't see it coming at all. And then when they got the lead, I was still skeptical. And then when they took the lead late in the game, I was still skeptical. I was skeptical throughout. And they just have frustrated me so much this season. Greg, how much did they frustrate you? Because you're cool, calm, and collected, but there had to be times where you were ready to throw the remote at the TV, right?
No, I mean I'm used to this. I'm not going to say used to it being a Bears fan. Just that, in New York, for instance, we went to 3 Super Bowls when I was there. Now the third one was I left right after that to come here, but in the seasons following our first 2, we won those Super Bowls, Super Bowl 21 and Super Bowl 25. Hell, we lost the next seasons, coming off a thing. So it's, you just get, it's the way things go. And you can't overreact. You have to be in, I gotta fix it mode. And so, and that's the way I think. It's okay. How do you fix it?
Right.
I'm not one of these guys that we've known each other now, be 5 years this summer that we've been doing this thing. So
that's longer than some of my marriages, Greg.
What the fuck? Pretty soon we'll be common law, and you're going to have to pay me money when we get.
That's right.
Excuse me. Yeah, I am not one of these people that are going to sit and got to fire this guy. Got to fire this guy. He's a bum. All this other stuff. You know what? They got hired for a reason, and I hate. I'll use perfect example. Chris Ballard. Now, you think Poles was getting it bad? Chris was getting it worse. Now, and our conversations were really DM conversations, so text conversations, not on the phone, but long ones. I mean, going back and forth. And he pretty much knew he was good. But you still see that, all that stuff. The family sees it. Now, he doesn't have little kids. He's got, his oldest is in his second year at Kansas. He's the quarterback. He's the backup quarterback. He's got a daughter who's at Baylor, who's a pole vaulter. He's got a son who's a football player, who's, I think, a junior or senior in high school. And then he's got two younger ones. And, they hear all this stuff.
Sure.
And I can't get on board with it. Yeah, I get it. Fans are going to say what they want to say, but they just holler for the sake of hollering.
Yeah.
And in this, and I think it's worse in this town than any town I've ever been involved in, because it's led by a very negative media. They just, what was that?
My pinball machine just started playing by itself.
You got a ghost in there?
I guess so. The ghost of George Alice. Let me unplug.
What kind of score is the ghost getting?
Oh, a lot higher than mine. That was weird. No, I hear you about that. That's one of the main things I've taken away from working with you is your constant reminders of these are humans. These are people with families. And so be careful of how and when you criticize people. I totally get it. I've become much more sensitized to that. I always thought that I was, but now when I send out a tweet, I wonder, should I say that? Let me pause here a second.
No, I get it because you know how I am when I put out posts. I shoot first.
I saw one this morning that was hilarious. Somebody asked you a question. Somebody asked you a question about Ryan Poles so this probably means Ryan Poles is getting an extension.
Yeah, and I said, WTF, you think? Yeah. Well, you know what? And then I sent the guy like 10 minutes ago. I sent him a thing. I go, you're about the 10th person that asked me the same question. And I've answered the same question over and over again. I said, of course he is. Why wouldn't he? And I also said, they don't have to announce it. They got no obligation to say he's got a 1-year extension, 5-year extension, 10-year extension. Keep it quiet. It's nobody's business but theirs.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that. I do think that if he gets an extension, they don't have to give the details.
He may have already have it.
It should be announced. Don't you think it should be announced though, so that the fans will stop bitching about it? And it's public. It will then be public for agents and coaches who are entertaining the prospects.
First of all, no coach is going to turn down an interview. There's already 6 set up for this week.
All right.
And there'll probably be more before the day's out. There'll probably be more before we're done. Okay. And most of the important names. I mean, Thomas Brown is a given that he was getting interviewed, but Vrabel, Johnson, Aaron Glenn, those guys are all getting interviewed this week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Brady from the Bills can't interview this week because he's playing Saturday. He can't interview until next week. Right. Why even put in a permission slip? You don't have to.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
So guys like, Vrabel, they could do him today if they wanted to. I don't know when it's set up because he's not employed by anybody. The only surprise name, and to some people it's not a surprise, is a defensive coordinator from Arizona.
Yeah, new name.
Yeah, but so I got to do some work on that. And our friend Eric from Windy City Gator, he's already done work on him. And I said, well, you better educate me because I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, Drew Petzing is his name. He runs the offense for Arizona.
Defense.
No, I think it's the offense. I'm pretty sure it's the offense.
I thought it was the DC. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the offense. I actually put a clip on Twitter with him breaking down an offensive play. So I'm positive he's offensive coordinator with the Cardinals.
My bad.
Today, Thomas Brown met with the media, and like I posted yesterday, the guy talks a good game, calls a bad one though. And today at the press conference,
I just say one thing, because what you
I saw you
don't
complaining
see when you're watching it what you don't see when you're watching on TV is what the hell's going on down the field.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
Green Bay, somebody says, well, they're taking away the run game. They kind of throw the ball downfield. No, not. They're taking away the deep game too.
By playing that cover too, yeah.
Yeah,
I hear.
Their guys weren't open. I mean, Green Bay had a hell of a plan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what. Everybody wants to call LaFleur a genius, yada yada yada. He was no genius yesterday.
No, he was not. He had a bad game.
The fact that there really wasn't going to make much of a difference in the playoffs, win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more dependent on what other teams did, not necessarily what they did. And so you got your quarterback hurt. Now, how badly, who knows?
Right.
But in the playoffs, you want them 100%.
Yeah, it might affect his preparation.
You got your speed receiver hurt, and to me it looked like an ACL, but who the hell knows? That could carry off into the first month of next year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then he calls a timeout late in the game. He accepted blame. He said the loss was on me, calling a timeout with about a minute to go to make the decision on whether to go for it on the fourth down or not. He was indecisive, and that really hurt his team. I want to ask, Chris Watts has a question. Were you happy with all those screen passes? Because didn't you tweet or post yesterday that, something about please stop calling screen passes?
I didn't. Somebody else might have. I didn't.
Okay.
I never said. I didn't say anything about play calling.
Okay.
Were there too many? Yeah, some of them worked, some of them didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, what can we do? It's like nothing's working. So what can we do? And what was working is get DJ the balls and let him make plays with his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? DJ made plays with his feet, and DJ got hoping on that one pass to set up the field goal. And I'll tell you, that was, Caleb's running the team on that play. They had to run a good 20 yards, get set, and be able to spike the ball. Did it all in like 10 seconds.
Yeah,
that was impressive.
Yes, that was very impressive. You're absolutely right. That should be talked about more. Thanks for bringing that up. Waitster has a question. Greg, I enjoy listening to all the knowledge. I'm in the Vrabel camp. I want a harder-edged coach personally. In your opinion, does the Mayo firing inhibit the Bears' chances to land Vrabel? Okay. Glad you asked that question and brought it up. I was going to bring it up anyway. In fact, I was going to send you a list of things to bring up, and then I didn't do it because I'll forget them. I got a list. Everybody, when Mayo got fired, everybody's under the assumption Vrabel's going there. Okay, is it a possibility? Of course. Is it a for sure? Hell no. He is in the. I posted this last night. Regardless of what people around here want to say about Ben Johnson, Vrabel's the hot candidate. Really? Because of experience? Because of his experience and really, the guy went to the playoffs 3 times. And some of the stuff that happened in the last 2 years was not of his doing. It's like he was given a shitty meal. And he's what a lot of people are looking for, but he is going to have his choice. Okay. Everybody's going to talk to him. He's already talked to the Jets. He's talking to the Bears this week. But people assume because he played for New England, that's a lock. Well, why? I think that, number one, that's not a good situation. Their roster is pathetic. Yes, it is. They got a quarterback. That's it. Okay. They don't even have a GM. They got Wolf, who's got some GM duties, but he's only got a director of player personnel or vice president of player personnel title. You do that. Titles are all about money now. I've said that before. So you don't have to pay him as much money when you give him that title.
And you got an owner who handpicked Mayo like 2 years before Belichick was gone.
Right.
They put in a thing. This is our next head coach when Bill steps down. So they didn't have to go through the whole interview process, right? So he handpicks him, and then he cans him after 1 year. Why would you want to work for that guy? And he sort of backstabbed Belichick going out the door.
Yeah, I hear you. You're making a lot of great points, and one of the great points that you've made is that when somebody is looking for a job, an agent will start planting news. There's news now that John Gruden is interested in coming back to the NFL, and that there's interest in the NFL in bringing him back. So the question Flex has is, do you see Gruden getting an interview here in Chicago?
No.
And do you think that this is all bullshit? Gruden's agent just saying, yeah, there's interest out here, Schefter. There's plenty of interest.
Two candidates have issues that are going to be hard to overcome.
Flores and Gruden.
And Flores.
Yeah.
Okay. And Flores probably easier than Gruden. Both of them know. Now, people say, oh, it's only a lawsuit. Well, both people are suing the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. Who is the NFL? The NFL is the 32 owners.
Yeah.
Are you going to hire the guy who's suing your ass?
I don't see that.
No, seriously.
Yeah, unless he agrees to drop the lawsuit. Right?
And that would have to be one of them. But he's already said, I'm not doing that. He said that a couple times in the past. He hasn't said it for this particular cycle. But he said, I am not dropping the suit, and anybody who tries to make that as a requirement, then I'll drop my name from consideration. So that's a problem. And then there's the issues that went on at Miami. There's players' issues. There was issues with coaches, issues with the GM. So it's like there's a lot of red flags there that you got to get worked out. Could he get hired? Yeah. But you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And I just put it this way. People say, oh, they're using the same analogy of Vrabel to New England when they put Flores to here because Poles was they were teammates at BC.
Yeah.
Okay, so I ask you a simple question. Did you get along and like everybody you ever worked with?
Hell no.
No, seriously.
Seriously.
I had a lot of teammates in all the years I played football for 23 years. I had a shitload of teammates. There's a lot of them I didn't like too. A lot are really close friends still years and years later. So who's to say they were good friends? We don't know the answer to that.
Great point. And by the way, thank you, Stephen, for the $10 donation to the bar room. Really appreciate that. Greg, I want to let me get to some of these questions because I think they're on topic here. For how many for Greg, what's the most coaches you've seen interviewed for a job during your tenure working for a team? Because the Bears could end up interviewing 15, 20.
No, I don't know. I got my number, my over-under number is 10, and I might be a little on the light side.
Yeah.
We're already at 5.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple names that Brady's not in there. What's funny is like last week we were hearing, well, Pete Carroll's going to get interviewed. It's like he's a corpse right now. Nobody's mentioning the name now. So that guy from Walter Football or somebody puts out that, well, I know it was last night, there's one chat that I'm on, DM chat. Guy puts out this thing and this guy puts out that, no, it was ML Football, I think, put it out that he's already putting together, making calls to see if people are interested in being on his staff. And somebody goes, well, look what he's doing. And some of these guys, they've never been involved. They don't know what goes on in the process. And I put in there, guys, he has to have his staff already together the day he goes into interview.
Yeah.
because that's one of the requirements. You got to say, this is my staff. Now, in saying that, there's got to be a little bit of a side valve in that you may want so-and-so as your candidate to be the coordinators, but you still got to do a search process. That's league rules. So, you got to be careful with that. And what gets out and what doesn't get out. Like I said, like if Vrabel were to be hired here, the biggest thing is who's his OC going to be?
Right.
Well, okay, he can have that in his mind, but he can't. He can name it to the Bears. He can't be put out publicly because then the interview process becomes a sham, and you can't have that. And
would he have a second name?
Probably as a backup.
Yeah.
Right. But in most cases, you've already got. Remember, because I went over this, several times before. Unless the guy's a coordinator somewhere else, there's no way the team he's with can hold him back. Now, if you hire an offensive coach, I mean, there's a big name that just came out today for the defensive guy. The Bengals coordinator, he's a hell of a coach. A couple of years ago, everybody was putting his name in for be a head coach, and then they have a bad year and he gets canned.
Unbelievable how this works.
You go from the throne to the shithouse real quick in this league.
Yeah, indeed. People are wondering about Mike Tomlin. He's in the playoffs, so you'd have to wait. But do you think he might leave the Steelers, or the Steelers would be interested in trading?
Pittsburgh way of doing things.
Yeah, really.
Really, since before I got out of college. Now, I've been out of college, almost 50 years. No, 50 years out of high school. Better than 54 years out of high school. And they've had 3 head coaches in 50 freaking years, man.
That's unbelievable. Chuck Noll was an incredible coach.
Chuck Noll, and then you had
Bill Cowher.
Yeah, and now you got Tomlin.
Yeah.
They don't fire people.
Right. And you can make a strong case that Tomlin's lack of success lately has been because of the quarterback position. Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
And is that his problem or is that the GM's problem?
That's the GM's problem. Right.
Okay, then you can go to this on Pittsburgh. Kevin Colbert retired. So the assistant moved up. And who's a very capable guy. But still, it's like, they took, Kevin actually drafted the quarterback from Pitt, who I think that was his last draft, and he faltered. So you can't put that on the new guy.
Yeah.
So it's, they're going to have to go back out this year and who knows what they think of Justin. I'll tell you, for the life of me, the last couple of games, I can't figure out why they haven't pulled the plug on their quarterback and put JF in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can't do any worse.
I totally agree with you. After a few weeks of defensive coordinators looking at the tape with Russell in there, it's just too predictable for the defensive now.
Yeah, Russell Wilson has got limitations.
Yeah.
He can read things quickly, but there's things he can't do. He doesn't have the mobility that he used to have. He's only 5'10".
Yeah.
That's not going to change.
Yeah. He is slow now. I mean, he really is slow. I mean, he can still move around, but compared to how he used to run, yeah. Evie wants to know about Kevin O'Connell. Jay Glazer yesterday came out and said that teams are calling Pittsburgh to see if there's any interest in trading. Minnesota. in case there's any interest in trading for him. What are your thoughts on the O'Connell situation?
I think it's all generated by Jimmy Sexton, his agent, who is famous for that.
I saw your tweet on that. Yes,
Jimmy Sexton is the king of, and I know Jimmy. Well, I haven't talked to him in years, but I mean he was close with Jerry. I got to know him real good. Been to his house in Memphis. I've been out to dinner with him a bunch of times, and he's a player agent. He's one of the few that do both. There's some that don't want to do both. Because they think that they're, doesn't work well, especially if you got a coach who wants to cut one of your players. I mean, and you got them both. Yeah. There's definitely conflicting problems there. So, but Jimmy, you started off mainly as a college coach, but he had at one time, he had like 75 or 80% of the SEC, the head coaches. He was the SEC. He ran the SEC. I mean, because he had all the freaking coaches. He had more power than the commissioner.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
But he used to play that game with coaches all the time. Somebody get fired, and then he'd leak it out to the press. They're going to call Spurrier. Because he must have got Spurrier 10 raises. And nobody ever called about Spurrier, but he got him raises every single year.
Jimmy Sexton.
And that's what he does. And he knows how to play the game, and he plays it well.
Yeah, I want to say that he has represented a number of Chicago Bulls players over the years. If I
don't
recall
know he
correctly.
was in basketball.
I don't take my word to the bank there, but I remember Jimmy Sexton, or a name similar to that, being a representative for the Bulls of the Michael Jordan era. Is he that old that he was an agent in the 90s?
Jimmy's younger than me. So,
Okay.
But he's got to be in his 60s.
There was a great joke there that I bypassed when you said he's got to be younger than me. But
anything you want to throw at me, you can do that.
Well, Virginia.
I'll tell you who. I mean, we used to get players. Remember, we had Metcalf, the guard. I think he was my second draft.
Yeah.
From Mississippi.
Wasn't a bad player. Yeah.
DK's dad. And he lived like 200 yards from my house.
Wow.
And just across Dilly's from where I live. And, and other players from Ole Miss. There was a quarterback. We never drafted him, but there's a quarterback that we had some interest in. I can't think of his name. He's from Tulane. This would be in the 02 draft. Ramsey, I think his name was. But he went maybe in the second round. We didn't like him that high. So, I mean, Jimmy's had some really good players over the years, but now I think the main part of his business is coaches. Like I said, he's one of the best, and he knows how to play the game better than. I mean, he just picks up his phone and says, "Well, I think this is going on." And, hey, play the game. And I tweeted out a little while ago. I hate saying tweet. I got to use the right word. Post.
Excuse me.
We've been seeing names the last few hours. So-and-so's going to get interviewed. The Bears are not required to announce any names that they've put in a permission slip for. And it's unlikely that they would put out any names that they put in permission slip. What happens is the agent calls the Ian Rappaports, the Glazers, the Schefters, and say, so-and-so is being interviewed by the Bears.
Right.
And those guys put it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's an agent's job, is to let people know, look, I'm doing a great job getting this guy face-to-face meeting with management.
But I'll tell you what, speaking, People are no. I put a thing. The Jets will jet. The Jets are just a terrible organization. I'm sorry. I worked across the river with a real organization at the time, the Giants. Okay, you look at their. I got the list of the names they're either interviewing or going to interview. Okay, and it's like, huh? I mean, there's a few good ones. Okay, they've already interviewed Vrabel. They've already interviewed Rivera.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Rex Ryan.
Yeah, and he said he's confident he's going to get the job.
Yeah, well, now. First of all, some of these, like they're going to interview Rex Ryan. They interviewed Riddick, and Louis Riddick's a good guy. Worked with Louis and Philly. Louis has not worked in the front office in 12 years now.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't Mike Tannenbaum works for ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
Rex Ryan works for ESPN. Louis Riddick works for ESPN. These are take care of my buddy interviews.
Okay.
And nothing else. Okay, Brian Flores, Josh McCown.
Now he's an interesting name.
I know he's an interesting name. Is he a head coach?
Not yet.
Okay, well,
down the line. Yes.
List. Okay, Joe Brady, which is a good name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith. Now, here's the name that's totally confusing because I hate the guy. Just hate him.
Really?
Brian Greasy.
Brian Greasy? It's a joke, right? This is April Fool's, right?
No, we're January 6th.
Unbelievable.
Never saw a player try to undermine an offensive coordinator more than Brian Greasy.
That's hilarious.
Okay. That was here.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Aaron Glenn, good name. Vance Joseph was a hot name a few years ago. Then, Bobby Slowick. Mm-hmm. And Bobby Slowick was kind of hot.
He was very
but
hot.
But the Houston offense fizzled out, and the quarterback has not had the year that he had a year ago.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. That very interesting. Greg,
Johnson has told them he will not interview for him, so he's already
that's right.
refused them.
Yeah, because they don't have a quarterback.
Well, it's not just that they don't have a quarterback; it's the Jets will jet. I mean,
Yeah, Woody Johnson, who inherited the team from the great Johnson and Johnson family, I believe. Unbelievable what he's done to that organization. Greg, last week we talked a little bit about the Rooney Rule, and I put out a clip on social media, and then under that clip, you said you had a few more things or a couple more things to talk about, including the fact that the Rooney Rule might be working against African-American candidates.
Okay,
please take the stage.
Use a hypothetical.
Okay.
But a hypothetical that works here because people have brought it up. Okay. Let's assume that Thomas Brown did a real good job. Went 4-1. So he's a legitimate candidate. And you say, you know what? He might be the guy to hire. And you weren't going to keep polls, but you think Ian Cunningham's the guy.
Okay.
You can't elevate either one of those guys. You have to do a full search, and you've got to do at least 2 minority candidates from outside the building who aren't a member of the organization, and then other people. That can work against the guys you want to get the job because the other guys can be real impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the guy you worked with who earned the job, you got to say, F you two.
Right.
I'm going another direction. Now, does that make sense? I mean, the whole thing of the Rooney Rule was to help minority candidates get a job. Well, in that hypothetical, that was elevating an African-American to a GM job and elevating the offensive coordinator as an African-American to the head coach job. But you can't do it because you got to you got to let the Rooney Rule apply, which means you got to talk to outside candidates. That's ludicrous.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, and one of the other things since we talked that I started to think about, maybe Greg is right about this and that. the idea that you are now, like, let's say talking to Weaver, the defensive coordinator from the Dolphins. Maybe there's no interest at all in Weaver, and the only reason you're doing it is because of the Rooney Rule. That's just unfair to the candidate. That's unfair to the agent. That's unfair to and on a lot of different aspects.
I brought this up in a conversation with somebody last night on X, and basically said that. I go, if it comes out, if everybody thinks that Vrabel is a total lock to go to New England, they have to interview 2 minority candidates from outside the organization. So they can't do it. If they interview one of their coaches, it doesn't count. These guys aren't stupid. I've had coaches tell me, I'm not doing that interview. I'm not going to be a token.
Right.
I'm not going to do an interview just to fulfill the Rooney Rule. I want to interview for one reason only, and that's because I'm a legitimate candidate. And so there are guys that won't do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was a great conversation we had last week, because I've been in favor of the Rooney Rule, but now I'm starting to think maybe it's not a good idea anymore. And that the NFL is doing other things for potential minority candidates, like having them coach the All-Star games, having them giving them more access for coordinator jobs, which is the best way to prove that you're ready for a head coaching job.
Right.
If you go to NFL.com, there's a whole list of things that the NFL is doing to promote the opportunities for African American candidates, and I think that those are far more effective now than the original Rooney Rule, which has turned into affirmative action, and that may not be the best thing to have.
Hey, look, Aaron Glenn is a great example on that. I mean, I think he's a great coach. He's going to be a head coach in a month or so. Mm-hmm. What he has done with that defense, with all the guys they got hurt, might be one of the best coaching jobs we've seen in years.
Yeah.
Just a remarkable job. And, so that alone tells you how good he is and how he can work with people on his side of the ball. But he's had to be innovative. He's had to get guys that are second and third stringers ready to play and then play at a high level. Mm-hmm. Great job. But to go back to the other thing, to use Antonio Pierce with the Raiders as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. He would be like say Thomas Brown. You want to give him the job. They still and everybody knew it. They still had to go out and interview people, and they did have a tough time bringing people in. Why should I interview? I'm not getting the job.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense anymore. It's got to be redone. And thank you, Chubbs, who writes, it's patronizing and demeaning. These guys don't want to be seen as victims that need help from white saviors. You're making a great point there, Chubbs. I saw this just off topic, real quick. I saw this debate between conservative black people and liberal white people. And that was one of the big statements the conservative black people were saying to white liberals. We don't need you to be our white saviors. And I was like, I never thought about it that way, but I can see how many black people are disgusted with the fact that they are being given a hand out as opposed to a hand up, or I may have screwed up that cliche, whatever. But it's a great
I know
point,
what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Okay. All right. Thomas Brown did meet with the media today, and which is why we started 30 minutes late. Somebody said, is Greg taking a nap? No, it's my fault. I want to hear the press conference. Here is Brown talking about the interviewing for the Chicago Bears job.
Yeah, well, I think having a chance to lay out my whole vision, the plan I have for this football team moving forward is going to be part of it. But I think them having a chance to see me in the building, something that to me should be more impressive than everything else. The situation I kind of had a chance to take over, having 3 different jobs in the same season, which I'm not sure that's happened before in the history of football. It may have been. I might be being dramatic, but you guys can Google that and look at it, which I haven't heard of it. But I think just the approach that I've had every single day in the building, the mentality I brought to the group, and I understand the results that we're all hunting up. I understand the expectation as far as everybody assumes stuff gets changed because you snap your fingers. That is not how change happens. Change happens over time. I think oftentimes when you're making radical changes, things get worse before they get better. But I think just being able to have him be in my meetings, see how I conduct myself in a team meeting, see myself at practice with as far as how I am with the group, should be more beneficial than anything else. But it's going to be just more about myself, my personality, but also the plan for this organization.
Greg, how difficult was it for Thomas Brown? Was it a mistake to elevate him to head coach?
No, I think we talked about that, 5 weeks ago when it happened. It was either him or Eric. And I think he was the only one that had a legitimate chance of becoming the head coach. I still think he's head coach material because he is a leader. I don't think he is a top-notch play caller.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now give him a different offensive line when you can do some things. Maybe that would change, but for him to run a team, I think he's shown that he can. Mm-hmm. We were pretty critical, more so probably me than you, but both of us, of the job Eric Washington wasn't doing the first 3 weeks, that the defense seemed to be falling by the wayside as compared to the way they played with Flus calling the plays. Well, the last 2 weeks, the freaking defense was outstanding.
Have been. Yeah.
So and the one thing you cannot say, this team kept playing hard. I didn't see, there were some times when you said, what? But overall, I thought the effort level of the players was good. I watched a little bit of the locker room scene. Caleb gave the game ball to Thomas. I thought that was well-deserved and a nice gesture on Caleb's part. It's usually the coach that gives out the ball. But the other thing that was interesting, you got a rookie quarterback who stood up to be the leader.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great moment. I really enjoyed the video that the Bears media team put out there of the locker room celebrations and the speeches that were made. And Caleb certainly looked like a leader. Brown today was asked what a second year with Caleb would look like.
If you got a second year with Caleb, how different would the offense look?
A lot different. I think from one standpoint of he's been through a season already won. So it's obviously some growing pains he's already worked through, but just from a foundational standpoint as far as the work in the offseason. I think if you want to be a great team, want to be a great quarterback, want to be a great player in general, it's built in the offseason, long before the cameras are on you, but long before you play a football game. So the foundational piece is going to be different. Obviously, understanding more about him and how he learns and how to communicate with him, but also what he needs to be at his best will be different because I have a chance to address that and approach that from day one. But also just overall his growth and development as far as a player will grow. So it would naturally be better because of that too.
Greg, after the game yesterday in the press conferences, Brown said that he's had some tough talks with Caleb over the last 2-3 weeks or so. And Caleb acknowledged that they've kind of gone at it. But Brown made it clear that he was doing most of the talking and really presenting to Caleb the mistakes that he's done, how much he's got to do, or whatever. But in other words, he was not pussyfooting around with Caleb Williams. That to me is very impressive that he wasn't treating him like a prima donna. You've heard a lot about Caleb and his work habits and stuff that you warned people about. Do you think that Caleb needs a disciplinarian as a head coach or offensive coordinator?
No, I think what I get out of all this is there's always a question of, can a guy take hard coaching? And that's a guy that until now has never been hard coached.
Yeah.
Okay, he had Lincoln Riley his entire college career, 3 years, 1 year at Oklahoma, 2 years at USC, and so he could be the prima donna, so to speak, and he was, and that's the wrong word. The big dog, it might be a better word. He was the big dog here the minute they drafted him, but when you look at Thomas Brown, his personality and the way he talks, he's not afraid to get in your face. And if a player can accept and take hard coaching, then I'm going to credit the player. I think differently of Caleb, knowing that he did it, because when a coach hard coaches you, when he gets in your face, it's not because he doesn't like you, it's because he loves you. He wants to get the best out of you. And when you learn that and you learn to accept it, that he's saying this because I want to be better, because he wants to make me better, then everybody gets better.
That's good stuff. And yeah, learning a lot about Caleb and watching his press conferences and stuff, I do think that it may have been an issue that people have been babying him in the past. By the way, Chubbs has donated another $5, and he's got this thought. This is the part where I don't agree. This is going back to a Rooney Rule. I don't agree 2 teams this year went from terrible to great with leadership change, Washington and the LA Chargers. I guess he's not talking about the Rooney Rule, but he's talking about something that we said earlier. He thinks that great leadership can exact immediate change, like we saw with Harbaugh and Quinn, 2 veteran coaches, by the way. Fair?
Yeah, you could throw in 3 teams. How about Denver? Now, this was Sean's second year at Denver.
Mm-hmm.
But, when Sean got there, he had a pretty barren roster.
Yeah.
Right. Some people say, I don't want the retread. Well, that's 3 retreads there that have done a pretty good job.
Yeah, exactly. I do agree with Chubbs in that if you get great leadership, but let's talk specifically the Bears. They've got a really good roster in many position areas. I think people are making this whole thing about they got so much work to do at these positions. That's not true. That is just not true.
Go back, we can go back to every show we did on Monday following a game and how far they were away. The difference between a winning record and 5 wins.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this much.
Yeah, perfectly said. Perfectly said. And so you make some adjustments in the trenches with the defensive line and offensive line that you can do via free agency in the draft if you get lucky. And all of a sudden, this team catapults from a 5-win team to a 10-win team. I really believe that. So
you got to. It's imperative that you get the right coach. I've been asked 1,000 times on X. It's the same question. Who's your favorite? And I say the same answer. I don't have one.
Me too. I've adopted that too.
Why?
From you.
They go, well, why? And I go, because I'm not sitting in the room with the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
How am I supposed to know what they're saying?
Yeah.
I don't. I can make calls and find out about guys, but I was privileged enough to sit in part of the interviews in the Lovey situation, and I've been involved in actually this a couple times. These interviews are so important. There's so much stuff that comes out. It's not just 3 or 4 questions. There's a lot of stuff you talk about, and you got to know what it is. You got to make your mind up fairly quickly, because you really only got a few weeks before you're going to have to hire somebody. But it's like, we got to fall in love and get married in 3 weeks, man.
Toughest thing in the world.
That's what it is. And you got to make sure that you picking the right partner.
Yeah, indeed.
A lot of it, say, well, you got to get this coach, you got to get this way. Well, the chemistry's got to be right too between the 2 people.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Greg, I got to listen to Olin Kreutz this morning on the Score Sports Radio. He had a lot of great tidbits. I want to share one with you because I want to get your take on this. He advocated for bringing in someone, not creating a new position, but bringing in someone at whatever position, assistant GM, blah, 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 whatever position that has some wisdom, who has been there before. Let's listen to Olin. I want your reaction on the other end.
Just take a look at the last, every time the Bears have won, guys. They have good offensive lines. They have good defensive lines. They have guys who protect the quarterback and attack the quarterback. And it just seems like to me when I was watching them make decisions through this process that the Chicago Bears, the guys up there at Hallis Hall, were ignoring their history. They're ignoring what works and what hasn't worked. And they were just making the same decisions over and over again that don't work. So you get an older guy in there that says, okay, guys, hold up a little bit. Little old school guy, let's do it this way. Doesn't mean he's always right. It just means you have that opinion in your building, a guy who has built teams before. And that's the same on coaching staffs, right? The last time the Bears won here in 2018, they had Vic Fangio in the building, helping out Coach Nagy, right? And Vic Fangio, we know, highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Chicago Bears, guys, if you look at their history, it's they put Lyman in the building, and they've had a lot of good football coaches on their coaching staff, but that is a lot of teams that win football games. 2006, guys, Ron Rivera, Lovie Smith, just a few names, right? Just Ron Turner, Harry Hiestand, just a few names of football guys in the building. All these people helping the Chicago Bears win football games.
Your thoughts on bringing more wisdom to Hallis Hall?
You know, it's number one. I always love whatever Olin says. I don't always agree with him. And then I got to run the other way because he'll, you know. And then we laugh about it. I mean, a lot of what he said, but what he said is bring in a guy and it's like, so somebody, and somebody must have been listening to that. And they said, well, what do you think about bringing in Pete Carroll as like an advisor? You know, and I was like, no, that wouldn't work. He's not a personnel guy. He's a coach. And would a head coach want a 74-year-old guy? You know, would Ryan Poles want me, you know, because I'm going to be 74, standing over and telling him, no, I think you should do it this way or whatever. You know, it's people got egos. But at the same time, the interesting part of what he said, because I was really listening hard to what he said, is everybody he named was a coach. Ron Turner, Ron Rivera, Harry Hiestand, Lovey. In other words, veteran coaches. And that means that I'm trying to read into this, but
sure,
the new staff should have some veteran coaches within that group. That makes sense?
It makes 100% sense. And his example of Vic Fangio.
Guys who have been there, done that.
Yep, exactly. So I wonder if Ian Cunningham should be replaced with somebody who has more wisdom. Maybe Ian Cunningham is the problem. Maybe his advice to Ryan Poles has been, you know, let's pay attention to the defensive backs first as opposed to the trenches. I don't know. I'm just coming up with shit out of my ass.
I know you're just giving off the wall.
Right.
No, I don't think you replace him because Ian's good. I mean, you look at his background and where he's come from and the people he's worked with and the success those people have had. So it's like just bringing in another voice of reason, an experienced voice of reason. The problem is that, okay, I'll use a real example. There's a lot of young GMs that don't want, you know, they have a very inexperienced staff because they're like threatened by the experience.
Right.
And there's other guys that there's so much confidence in themselves that they don't care. And they will go out and they'll do it. But I had a conversation with Ballard. It might have been yesterday morning or Saturday. It was just a text conversation. And because we had a bunch over the last few days. And he said that, we deserve the heat we're getting. I deserve the heat I'm getting because we haven't won. We're not in the playoffs. I get that. He said, where I have failed myself. And he said there's a couple things that were interesting. He goes, you guys taught me to do things a certain way. And I got away from that a little bit, and I failed myself on doing that. And he goes, then I read a book by Parcells, and I went back and Parcells made all these mistakes his first year and a half of the Giants. He just said, fuck it, I'm doing it my way from now on, instead of the way other people want it. And then we had success, and I said to him, that's right when I got there that happened. And, he changed his whole persona when he went through that. And like he said, where I failed the organization and I failed myself is not getting the right quarterback.
Fascinating. And I think, what you just talked about is true in life. It's true in so many other professions. All right. I want to.
Let me finish, because he said,
sure.
Because I think, like I said, he knew that he was staying, but it wasn't official. And he says, people aren't going to like what I got to say to him tomorrow. This was yesterday morning. Yeah. And he goes, because from now on, it's my way.
I love it.
and he goes, I'm going to rip some new assholes. That's like quote. And he goes, there are going to be some people who are very unhappy with what I say, but tough shit.
What else about this coaching search is something that's important for fans to keep in mind? Because, you said it a number of times on this show and on your social media account. A lot of us fans just don't know what insiders know, what people with NFL experience know. And so, I can put something stupid up there, like at the Bears, trading for Kevin O'Connell or whatever. But is there one thing in particular that really pisses you off?
No, what it is, it's people believe everything they read.
Yeah, right.
Who's the source? And it's like, look, if there's only a handful of reliable sources, all the rest are idiots sitting in mom's basement posting stuff. So it's like somebody keeps saying, why are they bringing in Weaver? Why not? Sometimes there's a variety of reasons that you interview a guy, and it may not be for this year. You may be interviewing him for the next one, or something like that. But you want to see how they grow.
Sure.
There's a lot of things, his record in Miami as the DC wasn't that good, but he's highly thought of. He was a good player. I mean, never an all-pro, but he played. Went to Notre Dame, good student, well-spoken guy. And so what's wrong with finding out where his head's at and finding out more about this guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
totally
so
agree.
And first of all, nobody's getting hired this week. Nobody's getting hired next week because you can't do it. Okay, theoretically, I guess you could hire Vrabel.
But they want to extend the search beyond Vrabel.
Right. Well, you got to get all the required interviews in before you can hire anybody.
Right.
Okay. So, and these interviews, and I'll tell you what's interesting, is that you can't interview anybody in person. Now, I'm not sure if Vrabel counts in that because he's not employed. But say the Johnsons and Glenn's and those type of people, you can't interview them in person until after the 20th of January. So that's 2 weeks from now. And a person that you interview in person starting 2 weeks from now has to be interviewed first via Zoom. It can't be the in-person interview, can't be a first interview. It has to be a second interview. So that means they got to get them.
I did not know that. That's funny.
Okay,
Wow.
so you got to get them. I just read it this morning. That's all I know about it. So it's got to be. So like the people they do this week and next week via Zoom, then they'll go into a next group of interviews starting the 20th. And if some of these teams are still playing, there's only going to be certain times that you can even talk to them because they got to, they still got to prepare their teams for a playoff game.
Right.
And officially, you can't hire them. Okay. Unofficially, well, you can maybe work something out with the agent, but you never want to get it out, especially if you got other interviews to go. Sometimes you can figure out if a guy said all of a sudden, Joe Schmo's set the interview at Jets, and then he cancels the interview.
Should the Bears be worried about, the Patriots moving quickly on Vrabel, or just say, hey, we gotta
Well, I'm not. That's the one rule I gotta, because the rules change this year. I gotta check up and find out if, and I'll ask Baylor or somebody, can Vrabel be hired now? Can I interview Vrabel in person now because of what his standing is? Or the same thing with Pete Carroll. Can I do Pete Carroll now? Can I do Ron Rivera now?
After you've done the required interviews, right?
Right. I mean,
the Rooney Rule.
Yeah. After you get all that, I mean, can I hire those guys now, or do I got to wait until after the 20th at least before I can make a deal? I don't know the answer to that one because again, the whole point of the thing was to try to give the coaches who were supposed to be good coaches from the contending teams a valid chance or valid opportunity to become a head coach.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And people are always in a hurry to say, well, you got to hire him because you got to put a staff together. And then I'm going to go back. Well, that used to be the case. It's not really the case now.
Interesting.
But I mean, it can be if 3 different people want the same guy and the guy said, yeah, I'll come work for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you got a problem there. I mean, there's never a completely clean situation, but being that it's the first year of this format, how they've done it, it'll be interesting just watching it. But the one thing, people think they see a name. Somebody said to me today, they're going to hire Weaver, aren't they? No, they're going to interview Weaver. What makes you think they're going to hire him?
Yeah, there's no reason to think that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ludicrous. I said to somebody, I go, stop reading things, stop listening to the radio, get off social media, and just let it play out. Otherwise, they'll drive themselves nuts.
Right.
And then there's people saying, and I've been on this for weeks now. It's Johnson or bust. Why? How do you know he's the right guy? What if he gets into an interview and it's just a total?
There's been rumors, again, emphasize rumors, that he does not interview well. That and some people.
Well, they said that about Brian Daboll too. Brian Daboll had a shitload of interviews, and then the word on the street was he doesn't interview well.
Yeah, it's like some players don't practice well, but boy, on Sunday they look like the best of all time.
I can only speak for me. I don't give a shit how he interviews. I want to know what the answers are. Yeah, I don't care how they come across, how they sound. I want to know what I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I want to know the substance of the answer, not how it sounds.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. Go ahead.
I'm interviewing the guy for a reason. He's already got the reputation and the product. You've seen the product on the field.
Mm-hmm. All right. A couple follow up to a couple of things that you said. I think actually you said this on X that the Bears are going to interview Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn this week, correct?
Yes,
all right.
sir.
And then the other one, Evie wants a question. Has a question. Can they still
Vrabel's being interviewed
Coach?
this week too. That's already said.
Right. And Thomas Brown said in his press conference he's this week. So they're going to be busy in that. Right.
Now, the guys, there's a rule like Glenn and Johnson, you can't interview them till Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
It's like till 3 days after their season ended. Now, if they played Saturday, then you could have done it Wednesday, but they played Sunday. So Thursday, and then because what I don't know, the ambiguous part is Saturday an interview day, because it says up until the wild card games start. Well, the wild card games start on Saturday. So can you interview them Saturday? I don't know the answer on that. That one's the gray area. But I know you can do those two guys Thursday and Friday for sure.
Okay.
Only can be Zoom. I think the time limit is 3 hours max.
All right. Dwayne has a question here that's sort of along the topic we're talking about in terms of schedule, at least the responses, in my opinion. Greg and Aldo, how does Caleb improve his footwork and accuracy this offseason? Well, first of all, the coaching staff, whoever the new coaching staff is, has to find out who Caleb is working with. Like they knew last year, and they were working together with Caleb's, I forgot who it was that was preparing Caleb for the combine.
Well, and it's probably going to be the same guy that he's working with.
Right,
he's comfortable with that.
Right.
It would be nice if you got the two in sync.
Absolutely. So I would imagine that's a big part.
There's offensive linemen that will go work with offensive line gurus. Some of the Bears work with Olin, and there's other guys that might work with a receiver guru, to help them with their route running or whatever. They all got these different programs, and they do this up until the off-season program starts. The off-season program doesn't start till late. Now, the advantage for the Bears on the off-season program this year, they're going to have a new coach. So they're going to start their off-season program a week ahead of everybody else, and they're going to get an extra mini camp.
Pretty cool.
All right, new head coach.
I think one of the things that you wanted to talk about was this whole idea that the Bears absolutely have to have a head coach who knows how to call, who has been an offensive coordinator and worked with quarterbacks. You are of the opinion, if I correctly read your post on X, that it can be a defensive coordinator. You just got to get the right guy. Am I right?
Yeah, and then he's got to have the right offensive guy.
Exactly.
And it's like I said, okay, you go through these first round of interviews, and this is all hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Vrabel's the most impressive. That's the guy I want. Okay. But you got to know, you're going to find that out through that first interview. Who's your OC? Who's your offensive line coach?
Right.
You know what was interesting? Speaking of Vrabel, is I had just read like Monday when he got out of his contract with Cleveland so that he could start interviewing right away for teams.
Right.
He's been the de facto offensive line coach there for like half the season. And lo and behold, who'd they fire yesterday? Their offensive line coach.
Wow. Look at that.
And he's a defensive guy. So, but to know that he had been doing that is just interesting because it's just another tool that he has in his tool bag.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So Any other defensive coaches out there that you would like to see the Bears interview besides Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel, Anthony Weaver? Those are all three.
Well, Weaver, I suspect Flores will get an interview. I'm kind of surprised they didn't put the name in yet, unless it happened since we started. A lot of people thought that was a lock, and I just said that one ain't happening. And I've got my reasons. Unless things change, the number of head coaching positions available isn't that many. Okay, I mean, you look at what's opened up. The ones we already know, and now Jacksonville.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
Giants didn't open up. Colts didn't open up. And Jacksonville did themselves a huge disservice in keeping Trent Baalke.
My goodness, who's going to want to go down there and work for that guy?
Well, somebody said that has got to be the Jets' job. Might be the worst, but Jacksonville would be a close second, or Jacksonville's the first, and the Jets are the close second. The Jets because they're the Jets. Okay, yes, I'm biased because I work for the Giants, but the Jets always suck. So they are the longest team to go between playoff appearances in the league. It's like 16 seasons or 18 seasons or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville, just think about it. Every single frickin' year, you got to go over to Europe and play 2 games. That's an inconvenience.
Absolutely.
2007, you don't have a stadium to play in. They got it because they're redoing the stadium they're in, so they're going to be in a different stadium. So I said, they're going to be on the road all year. Somebody said, that's not true. They're going to be in Daytona. That's only an hour and a half away. And I said, excuse me? We went through this in 2002, and it's a royal pain in the ass. Every game is on the road.
Yeah.
It's not like I haven't been through it. I've been through it.
You just reminded me of a question I got to ask, but at first I want to get to Swifty's breaking news here. Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, the Bears have put in an interview request.
Okay.
What do you think about Mr. Kafka, former quarterback?
Kafka has connections with Poles because he was in Kansas City. So he's got some Andy Reid under him.
What have you ever talked to the man?
No, I don't know. He's a Northwestern guy.
Swifty, thanks for that very much. Yeah, I remember him at Northwestern. That's right. And he was primarily a backup quarterback in the NFL, but has had a lot of success as a coordinator. He's a good name. Mm-hmm. Is he in the prime list? I mean, I can't answer that. That's why you have interviews. He could knock their socks off. And it's not about winning with the name. It's I'll say this until the day they hire a coach. It's getting the right name, the right person. All right. The thing that I just jotted down here when you were talking was you shared a post from a gentleman who said that searching for a GM is expensive. It's a pain in the ass. You got to do tons of research.
He was Howie's assistant GM, and he's from here.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Can you expound on that? How much of a disruptive force that is for an organization to look for a general manager? And then one of the things that he said that I didn't think of, but it's obviously true. It's expensive.
Well, because you got to. Well, they have, in fairness, where he's not totally up to date, is you can do a lot of these on Zoom now. Before you were here, and you had to go to the city, and you met with them in person. Okay, so now you're doing this whole first round just like you and I are talking here, just flapping your jaws, looking at your computer screen. But it's still, well, I'll tell you where it's difficult. So Ryan Poles is going to be involved. Ian will probably be involved, not as much as Ryan, but be involved. You know where he's not going to be? Senior Bowl, the East-West game. You know, why? Because he's doing interviews. Did Jerry? No, Jerry couldn't go.
Interesting.
So, you know, I had to make sure I was getting it right at those things because Jerry wasn't going to be there.
Very, very interesting. All right, let's see what else I got here. We are going to make sure we're out by a certain time because Greg has some very important work to do. You want to share some of that? What you're doing?
Just East-West work for the final grouping of players.
There you go. It's going to be a fantastic East-West Shrine Bowl game. They've done a great job.
Commitment from a running back. Shit, I can't think of his name now. But I did him for an agent like 2 weeks ago. Might be the best pass receiving running back I have ever done. Not in college. I mean, when's the last time you saw a running back in college catch over 60 passes in 1 year? He's got like almost 100 catches the last 2 years.
That's phenomenal. I bet you Swifty knows the name. He's going to put it up in the chat. What about this kid Scatterboo? You know, I saw him for the second time in the bowl game recently. What a phenomenal power back. Mike Allstat type. Do you like him?
He's listed as like 205, 210. He looks a little bigger than that.
Yeah, sure does.
He's an overachiever. I mean, he can't. When he runs, you'll probably get an upset stomach because it might run a 4.7. But he is tough. We call he's an overachiever. Guy plays his ass off.
He's got a great
heart. He's got a great heart. He's a winner. His football character is probably off the charts. You know, loves the game. He's got limitations. You know, he's got physical limitations. That doesn't mean he's not going to play in the league.
Yeah. Dwayne says that he's probably going to be a fullback in the NFL.
I don't know if he's big enough to be a fullback. First of all, how many teams carry a fullback?
Yeah, not too many.
Like on one hand.
8, I think, is the number that I last saw a year or two ago. Yeah. Samo says he's more like 220, and that's what he looks like to me.
That's what he looks like. I just saw a listed weight, and I go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I could wait a minute. I got a thing here. Bear with me. I don't know if he was weighed and measured in the spring, but if he was, I got it. So just let me get into this file here.
Sure thing. And I'll ask people while we've got the last 15, 20 minutes of the show, if you've got questions, fire away. I'll share them with Greg. I've got, how many did I got? I got about 3 or 4 in the queue left. And again, thank you for those who have donated some money to the Barroom Chubbs and Steven.
Only estimates.
Only estimates? Okay.
Yeah, they estimated 5'11", 220.
By the way, Dimitri is absolutely right. He says, going back to Jimmy Sexton, he was Scottie Pippen's agent at one time. And the controversy with Jimmy Butler. He was Jimmy Butler's agent. So, yes, he did do some.
Okay, I learned something there. I didn't know Jimmy did any basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he doesn't now, but he did back then. Levante did some research, says he sees 5'11" for Scatterboo, 215 to 220 pounds. Thank you, Levante. Levante and I had an interesting discussion over X. He still believes that Ryan Poles should be the GM. He's obviously right. It doesn't appear like it's going to happen, right?
It's a done deal. He's the they got interviews this week.
Yeah.
It's a done deal. He's here.
Yeah. And Levante's point was there's just been a lot of things and that fans are too quick to make a judgment on the GM, and it's best to stay patient and let the guy do his work. I'm adapting that now, Levante.
Well, and I can use 2 examples. You know, I know the Mara family really, really well. I know Chris, I know John, and you know, worked for these people for 17 years. Chris was a scout with us in the room the whole time, and he's a very good scout. John was the corporate attorney at the time, when I first got there. He didn't have the power and the clout that he has now, because Wellington was still alive the whole time I was there. But if there's anything about the Mara family that I know, is that they are very, very patient. Okay. And they know that what happens when you say, okay, we're getting rid of everybody. It's not just the coach and the GM. It's about half your rosters going out the door too, because they're smart enough to know that new GM, new coach wants his players, and you got fit his scheme and everything else. So, Poles has already got that. Hey, no, these guys are here. Unless you're playing a scheme, and more so on defense, that you hire a defensive coach that wants to play a totally different type of scheme, and they're going to be doing more two-gapping. Then you need some big elephants to be brought in, or something like that. But and the same thing with the Colts with Jimmy Irsay. Jimmy's been. People can say what they want about the guy. Got the greatest freaking car collection in the world. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Nobody comes close.
Wow.
He's got probably hundreds of millions of dollars worth of rare guitars.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yep. No, but anyway, he's grown up in the business. When his dad, he worked as a assistant weight coach and then in the front office. Now, he's got his issues. Chris loves him. You just got to be able to, the guy, how to work your way around things. But he's also very, very patient. And he's learned that. People around here want to, they want the St. Valentine's Day's Massacre every other year. I said to somebody, they could hire Johnson, and if he loses his first 2 games, he's a motherfucking bum and fire him. Right? Am I telling a lie?
You're not. You're not telling him. That's the truth. Absolutely.
Why didn't you hire Vrabel? That's the right guy. That's the way they are here. Nobody has any patience.
I love it. Bruce wants to know, you worn your Bears number 18 hat a couple of times. There it is right there.
That one?
That's the beauty. Beautiful. And Bruce wants to know, how do I get a hat like Greg's number 18?
Well, have him, give him my email, have him, because I'm not going to say everything on the thing.
Yeah.
There's somebody that made it.
Yeah.
Technically, it's probably,
it might be totally legal. I mean,
I don't know, because it's an NFL it's not an NFL property license.
Right. Thing. But you can make the argument that it could mean anything.
But I think that he made enough little adjustments in it that it's not a exact.
Yeah, that's not a legal issue. Yeah.
But my son-in-law makes these. He's got a business.
Yeah. Send me a DM and I'll point you in the right direction. All right, some other questions here. Let's see. Who is this that wanted to know about do you have any offensive line crushes? It's my guy over at Sports Chicago Style. Greg, who are your offensive line draftable crushes? Follow up. How long are his arms?
Okay.
This Will Campbell guy is so intriguing. Intriguing.
But he had 33-inch arms last spring.
Yeah. And
you know how I am with spring arm lengths.
Mm-hmm.
He could have 34. That's how off they can be. So we gotta wait. We gotta wait till the combine.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said to me, by winning yesterday, they really screwed up. This was on a post, because now the top 2 offensive linemen are going to be gone. I said, no, they're not. They're both going to be there. There's not an offensive lineman worthy of a top 10 pick this year. And I really don't think there is. There's two, because Campbell and Banks both have question marks.
Yep.
They're good players, but they got question marks. Banks, it's height. Banks is listed as being 6'4". Okay, 6'4", 320, whatever. What if he's 6'3.5"? We're not going to know that until the combine. Okay, and if he's 6'4.25" and he's got 34.5 inch arms, he's a tackle. Not a problem. If he's 6'3.5" and got 33.5 inch arms, he's a guard. Okay, so are you going to take a guard at 10? If Will Campbell keeps those 33 inch arms, or maybe they go down to 32 7/8, you know, you going to take him in the top 10? You know, that's right now the way it looks to me, and way, way early, that your first round draft pick could be a defensive player.
Well, Mason Graham or the pass rusher from Penn State.
He's hurt. Carter.
Yeah, he is.
Carter.
But those two guys.
Shoulder. I don't know. I wonder if he's going to be good to go against Notre Dame on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think not. That's the word that I'm hearing, but we'll find out from more.
I mean, I haven't followed their side because I hate Penn State. That goes back to my days as being a scout and Joe Paterno. I despise the school because of Joe Paterno, and not because he is just Joe Paterno, the person. It has nothing to do with the other stuff. But
you've told that story about how difficult he was for you to scout his players.
I want to get. It's real simple. I want to get the proper information. If I can't get the proper information, I don't like the school. Real simple. I'm trying to get my job done. If I can't do my job, screw you. I don't like you anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a perfectly fair. That's fair attitude for you to have.
Absolute worst. And so I've hated that school ever since. Even though I got some friends that are graduates of there. But
interesting.
Galco went to Penn State.
I didn't know that. Look at that.
For law school. He went to Delaware undergrad and went to Penn State Law.
Interesting. A lawyer. That's maybe, well, I won't say it. Okay, so gosh, I forgot my follow-up question to you, but nonetheless, I got a question here. Let me share it with you. Oh, we were talking about the defensive lineman and that it might be the way to go in the first round.
Yeah, it depends how it falls.
Mm-hmm.
And see, people say they screwed up by winning. How do you screw up by winning? Okay, remember how we said the last 2 weeks, this team needs a win. Caleb needs a win. Mm-hmm. And a win there was even that much better. I put out on X right before we came on. It says, my timeline's been real quiet. I haven't had an obnoxious, arrogant tweet from a cheesehead all day.
I love it.
Somebody said they've been real quiet.
They have been. And I posted yesterday a number of posts from Green Bay Packer fans who were so upset at their head coach. I mean,
they wanted to fire his ass.
Yeah. He's a prick. I don't understand why we blah. Oh my gosh, this guy is a damn good coach.
Every fan in every city is alike.
Yeah,
they're front runners.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, but Green Bay, the most entitled fan group in the world is probably the Green Bay Packer fans because of their early history of Super Bowls.
I agree. I got to be honest. I mean, I've been up there several times when I worked here for games, and it's only a 2-hour drive for me. Their crowds, their fans at the games are terrific. They really
are. They are.
And nice people. I always have to go up into the press box, but like my wife and my stepson or my kids, they go out, and there's a few times that they just be wandering around the park. And never been to the Lambeau?
Yeah, 3 times.
Okay,
I love it.
Wandering around the parking lots, and people come on over. And they'd have Bear gears on.
Yeah.
And come on over. And my wife said they were just terrific to her.
They really are good people.
She said that's the best place I ever gone to a football game.
Yeah. I agree. It's a great stadium. I really recommend all Bears fans put it on your bucket list. If you like to see live football games, you should definitely in your life see at least one game at Lambeau. It's a great, great experience. The Scrolls
there's one story that was
sure.
about going up there, and it had nothing to do with Green Bay and everything to do with Wisconsin. So we're playing, and this is a while ago, but the team used to bus up and then they fly back.
Right.
Because it's such a short drive or whatever. From Hallis, it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes to get to Green Bay. And they wouldn't stay in Green Bay. They stayed at what's that town? It's southwest of Green Bay, about 25 minutes.
Appleton, is it?
Appleton, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, we decide, it's like a noon game, so we're going to drive up. So it's Bobby DePaul was driving, was Bobby and Ted Phillips in the front seat, Cliff Stein and me in the back seat. So driving up, we crossed the state line into Wisconsin. We didn't go 2.5 miles, and we were pulled over.
Of course, Illinois plates.
And it was one. How they're on that roadway on the side, and then they can pull out in the thing. That's where the guy was, and Bobby was probably going. And the speed limit is 70 now in Wisconsin. It was 65 then. Bobby's probably going 74, 75. He gets a ticket, and we just started thinking that those some bitches knew that people from Illinois were coming up, and they were just waiting for them.
That's a great story. Well, and before you were employed by the Bears, there's a great story of a number of Bears getting speeding tickets after a Packer game driving home, and Mike Ditka got a DUI once. So,
did he really?
Yeah, he got a DUI on his way back from Green Bay. By the way, hello, Mr. Minister Charles Johnson. How goes it? Our prayers were answered yesterday, Minister, so it's going great. We got to win. The Scrolls has an interesting thought here, because I was thinking about this yesterday myself. He says, I want to trade down and get an extra pick. Now, Greg, you put on X that you would rather be drafting, I think you said from 9 to 14 in this draft.
No, I said this draft at the top isn't. It's like compared to last year, we had all those quarterbacks and stuff.
Right.
So you don't have that strength up top. So this is a bad year to want a quarterback. And there's just no real special player. You could say Hunter's special. Or whatever. Yeah, but at the premium positions, Carter might be special. Hope his shoulder's okay.
I hope so too.
But it's not normal. So my thinking is just looking at this and haven't got into it in depth like I will get into it. But you're better off. I'd rather be picking between 10 and 15 than 1 and 9.
Yeah,
there's more bust factor in 1 and 9 than there. It's like I if they're dead set on taking an offensive lineman, I think you go out on it going down.
Yep.
Maybe there's like 2 defensive players that say, okay, if either of these guys are here, we're taking them. Otherwise, we're going back, because it's like you might be reaching, and it's not. You just want to get the guy at the right spot. And if you're reaching for them, then, the second round, okay, they got the 8th and the 10th pick of the second round. That's where you're going to get your linemen this year, because the second round is really strong for offensive linemen.
I've heard that a couple of times now, so I'm glad that you're confirming that. Got a question here I'd love for you to address. OKC Bear Boy says that Carter is listed at 6'3". Do you see that as an issue for the defensive end from Penn State?
No. Arm length is going to have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
His get off is amazing.
He's like Parsons. He can
yes.
Parsons is only like 6'2.5". I'd have to look up the exact measurable, but he's not a real big guy, and they really play the exact same position. Wear the same number. They wear that special number 11. That's the magic number for the Penn State defensive.
Interesting. Now, would you consider moving up from 10 if you could land the Penn State defensive end, or the guy that I love, the other guy that I love in this draft, the defensive tackle from Michigan, Mason Graham?
Right. How far do you got to move up? And part of that's would be answered to me. I'm just trying to think out loud here. What do I get in free agency first?
Great point. Absolutely.
Because there's things. Hey, I got a new coach coming in. I got to take care of him. I have to have this offensive line right. Doesn't mean you have to use the first pick on an offensive lineman, because you don't want to stretch to take a guy. But if you want to get Carter or you want to get the Graham, and you got to come up a few spots to get him, then what's it going to cost? And if you score good on the offensive line in free agency, well, then maybe, because it might only cost you 3, because you're not going into the top 5 necessarily.
Right.
So you might have to for Carter, because Carter's, again, see what the injury is. Because he's got some special to him, and he is at a premier position as a pass rusher.
Got a question here from Best Meat Marinade. Greg, can Booker play linebacker? And the reason I was hesitating is I also want you to assess Booker's play in his rookie year.
No, I don't think he could. Well, if they went to a base 3-4, and then he'd be an outside backer, which is really playing the same thing he's doing now, because he plays up on his feet a lot anyway in pass rush situations.
Yes.
So he needs to get bigger and stronger. Knew that the day he drafted.
Mm-hmm. The
guy plays hard every single snap. That's one of the things I love about him. And Chris's kid knows him. Said he's Cole Ballard said he's a great kid. I don't know him from a hole in the ground, but Cole speaks real highly of him. So I think his football character is way up here. He's going to do what he's supposed to do in the offseason. Part of that's going to be, who's going to be the coach, who's going to be the defensive coach, and, what are they going to want me to do? So let's just play the hypothetical game, even though I hate that game. Let's say they hire Johnson, and Johnson's DC is the guy who just got canned at Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how to say his last name.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay. So what's that mean for the Bears defense? Not much. Very similar.
Interesting. Okay.
Might want a little more beef inside, and I'd be all for that. I think they need more.
I agree with you on that.
Inside.
And there's some good beefy mid-round guys, intriguing.
I'll tell you, there's a guy who's, to me, is a day 3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Just accepted his invite. Now I can't think of his last name. I played in Indiana and transferred. He was at Kent State.
Okay.
And he's probably, who he is? He's a young version of Billings.
Ooh, I like that.
That type of guy.
Yeah. Well, let's see if he.
Athletic for a big guy. He's not as bulky in the gut. He's probably 320. All out motor. Plays his ass off all the time. Could really use his hands. For an inside guy, rushes the passer really well. You know, I sent a text to Poles. I said, if you don't know this guy, look at him because he fits your team. He's and this was weeks and weeks ago. It's a it'd be a one tech in the Bears scheme, and it'd be a good one.
The Booker has the guard from Alabama has declared for the NFL. Mike Ibsen wants to know what do you think about that big guard if we switch to a more of a gap?
I don't see him as a great fit in this particular blocking scheme.
Right.
To get out in space.
Right.
But then if you got but they played all year with Pryor in there, and Pryor is like the worst athlete on earth. I mean,
he really is bad. Yes.
I looked up Pryor's measurables from back when he came out, and he was a 5'7", 40 years ago. You know, that was like 8 years ago. So if he can play it, anybody can play it. But yeah, I mean, he's not what you'd want. But if you're gonna probably have a totally different blocking scheme, so it doesn't matter. The guy I really like, and he's probably a third rounder, and I've mentioned his name before. He's just a maniac. Is Luke Newman from Michigan State, left guard, number 70.
Yeah, you talked about him.
Oh, I love the guy, and I haven't watched the last 4 games, so I don't know how he played those games. He's playing in the East West. He played at Holy Cross. He was a tackle at Holy Cross. And then, you know, played 4 years at Holy Cross, graduate transfer to Michigan State for 1 year, came in. And what was interesting watching the tape is even though he's a guard, never played guard until this year. And it took him a few games to get used to playing inside from outside. But he was making all the line calls. The center wasn't, he was. You could see it.
Yeah.
Which means that he's pretty well, you know, he went to Holy Cross. Holy Cross is a good school. So
I'm keeping an eye on the clock for you, Greg, because I know you got that meeting in about the 15 minutes or so. A couple of questions that I really wanted to ask, and this one might take
some reports too. So
yeah, so
that's only gonna take a minute.
Maybe we should talk about this in our next show. But what I wanted to ask was, we want to know what questions are being asked of the head coach, but what questions should the head coach ask of this organization?
They want to. It's like you're interviewing him. So it's like, what's your vision?
Yeah, talk to me, Ryan, about your vision. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's what some people don't understand. It's really a dual interview.
Mm-hmm.
You're interviewing him, and he's interviewing you.
Mm-hmm.
Because chances are, this may be his only shot at being a head coach. So he wants it right, and that's one of the reasons I said about Vrabel. Vrabel was a head coach for 6 years, or 5 years in Tennessee. Got canned, so he's going to get one more shot. He's still relatively young. He's 49 years old. He wants to make sure it's the right spot. So that's why I don't think it's a lock that just because he played at New England that he's going to be New England's coach.
Interesting. On a similar line, by the way, thank you, Keith Lutz, for the $10 super sticker. And I'm sure you'll be on the Mike North Advantage, which is going to be at 3 o'clock. Keith is a big fan of Mike North. So we'll see you then. And thank you again for the $10. D. Levine says, how critical is it that the hiring prospect that process that prospective head coaches cannot choose their own GMs?
Because that's not the way it's done.
That's right. At least that's not the way it should be.
Yeah, that's, there's a couple that can do that. Bill Belichick, Harbaugh, in essence, did. Harbaugh had skins on the wall now, went to a Super Bowl in the NFL, and he won a national championship in college. Andy Reid. But for the most part, the coach, Johnson. What's Johnson got to say I got to bring my own GM with me? And who's to say that guy is better than the guy you already got?
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, he's got to go through the growing pains of being a rookie GM too.
Exactly. Yeah, the only thing that Ben Johnson could potentially have that would help him get a GM of his choice is a great agent, right? Because maybe an agent like the best super agents can pull that off for Ben, but I don't know who his agent is.
You mentioned it once, I think. I can't think. He's from the East Coast. It's not one of the typical.
The agent's name?
Yeah, it's a guy. He's relatively young guy, and it's not like he's got that big stable.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Gotcha.
Where some coaches guys do. So he got to look at the situation. He's got to feel comfortable with Ryan. He already knows the team from playing against them for the the last 3 years. He knows a lot more about the defense really than the offense. But it's what's his vision for Caleb and what's he think the offense needs, and can you get it? And there might be a couple coaches, and you and I talked about this on our own, on his staff at Detroit, on his offensive staff that he may want to bring. And one is a good friend of mine. And I already hit him with the text. I told you this. I'm not going to mention his name. But I said, if Johnson comes here, might you be the OC? And I already told you what he said. Well, it's a little too early for that.
But that they've been talking about it.
I can put it this way. He could be in position to be the OC in Detroit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think it's a given that Detroit is losing both their coordinators. That's a positive for the Bears.
Indeed. And what the Lions did to the Vikings last night on Sunday Night Football, what the Lions defense did, basically sealed the fact that Aaron Glenn is going to be a head coach very soon.
First of all, the last time I talked to Aaron Glenn was when he was coming out in the draft. I was working for the Giants. They interviewed him, went to his workout. He's a dynamic personality. You can see that he's going to control a room. That's what I remember from him, and that was years ago.
And that dynamicism, if that's a word, has only gotten better. The players love him.
He might be the most underrated guy in this cycle.
Wow. Interesting.
Because everybody's going, got to get the offensive guy, got to get the offensive guy. In the meantime, that guy's doing a remarkable job.
He really is. With all the injuries that team has faced and how they're performing, it's really fantastic. Greg, any final words that you want to impart on us before you head to your meeting?
No, it's just going to be interesting. I just wish people would be more patient, not believe everything that they see on X that is a rumor that means absolutely nothing. Okay, so people are saying, there's one guy saying, well, this guy's the favorite for the Saints, and this guy is the favorite. Bullshit. There hasn't been one interview take place yet. Well, there have been a couple for the Jets. But, it's a long way to go. We're still at the top of the first inning here.
Right. And I think that would be the biggest advice that you have for people is be patient. Because we're not going to know for at least another week and possibly 2 weeks.
If it's Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson, it might not be till after the Super Bowl. If it's Joe Brady, it might not be till after the Super Bowl. Because if they go that far, and there's a good possibility that Buffalo could face Detroit in the Super Bowl, you're not going to get a shot at those guys until after the Super Bowl.
Well, but if you offer them the job and they accept while the team is in the playoffs, that could happen.
Well, that's got to be real quiet. I mean,
Okay.
you can't. It's
because that's happened in the past.
Theoretically, yeah, but theoretically, you can't do it.
Okay. Because I can't recall a name, but I remember,
McDaniels, and then he backed out of the deal because he wasn't official with the Colts.
That's right. Yeah, what an asshole that guy is.
How about the agent fired him?
That's right. That's right. I remember now. Yes. Good stuff. His name is Greg Gabriel. You can find him on X at GGABE Football. My name is Aldo Gandia at Barroom Network on X. See you next week, Greg. Unless something big happens, I'm going to call you about it.
Yeah, I can't think anything big going to happen. Not way too early.
Oh, quick question. Do you think that the Bears might tell some coaches you're free to look for a job this week?
I'm sure they've already told them that.
Okay. Interesting.
That as part of the closeout this morning, they're under contract, but probably said, if something comes up, you got to say that. You can't. The team, there may be somebody they want to retain, but that's up to the next coach.
Yeah, that's right. Totally his decision. So
you can't hold the guy hostage.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean,
it's going to get complicated.
In theory, you probably could, but you're really
burning bridges.
A total asshole, and agents would kill you for doing that, especially because these guys, even though most of these guys are new this year, so they probably got 2-year deals. Mm-hmm. The Waldron being a coordinator probably had a 3-year deal. They're going to get paid next year. Doesn't matter. They want to work.
Exactly. And they want to know where they're going to work.
Yeah. So it's a crazy business being an assistant coach. You're a nomad. You're a true nomad.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Greg, you're the best. We will see you soon. And thank you for everyone who joined us live and those people who sharing the program with others. Take care, everybody.
See you later.